Face it, friend, you can't stop watching the Dream SMP. Today, I'm going to tell you why. Also, I'll tell you why the Dream SMP is one of the most addicting, bingeable universes online today. Welcome back, friends, and a special welcome to all the new friends out there. I'm YoBGS, and I've been reacting to and studying the Dream SMP for the last few months. Now, you may not have realized this, but with 850,000 people watching one of his latest streams on the Dream SMP at the same time, Technoblade pretty much had one of the best rated shows on TV for that day. Why? Why are millions of people glued to every stream of the Dream SMP? Why do people watch and rewatch the events of the Dream SMP from every angle to learn all the lore they can? It's actually not that new of a phenomenon, but the Dream SMP has just done a better job than almost any channel on TV or on the internet at capitalizing on these time-tested methods. Now, as a quick aside here, I'm going to be focusing on much of what the Dream SMP wiki calls the L'Manberg Independence arc and the Manberg Rebellion arc. They basically include all the elements through the fall of Manberg. In part, it's to stay spoiler-free from what I haven't seen yet, and obviously these are the parts that I'm the most familiar with. Now, I'm a fan of boxing, pro wrestling, UFC, the way these groups build and pay off the drama, the way they create like the fight of the century. The Dream SMP has done a better job hyping their conflicts than any of these organizations in the last like 20 years. By the way, if this video makes you hype, if you like what I'm saying, please make sure to subscribe. It helps the channel more than you know, and I appreciate it more than you can imagine. Now, gotta tell you this, to get invested in a fight as a fan, invested in a conflict, you gotta know 5 things: location, opponents, motivations, stipulations that create questions, and a challenge asked and answered. The Dream SMP owns this because they don't just do it once, they do it almost every episode. Location. For these arcs, it's L'Manberg. Manberg. On the Dream SMP. They say this every chance they get, and every actor in the story knows to use these terms as much as humanly possible, so it is drilled into your brain. Opponents. Well, that's plain as day from the start, right? Dream took Tommy's discs. Both sides there. Wilbur and Tommy seceded from the evil dictator that was Dream. The election had Swag versus Pog. Pogtopia versus Manberg. Going into any main storyline episode on the Dream SMP, you know exactly what the sides are, as well as who the sides are that you should be cheering for and against. There is a tactic that can throw a wrench into this, but I'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit. Now, motivation. Get the discs back, right? Gain power. Get independence. Become president. Overthrow the president. Where most episodes of the main part of the Dream SMP do well here is that almost every episode has the story so far. It's a recap of everything in that particular arc. So even if you do come along in the middle, you know the location, the opponents, the motivations. Like stuff like this, it separates an epic event like the War of Manberg from like just a random griefing on 2B2T, right? The characters are invested in what they're doing. It's beyond just like, TNT and fire go burr. Now, for stipulations, other promoters would call this like stakes. It's basically what's on the line, right? Why should we, as the viewers, care? And basically, if it was 5 friends playing on a private server, and who cares about any of it, like, why would I want to watch that on YouTube? Interestingly, though, all of the canon episodes on the Dream SMP have fairly huge stipulations, even stepping away from the idea of the issue of like canon or not canon deaths. Honestly, I think in this, Tommy is the best at laying out the stipulations because he sets up every video as like the greatest conflict of all time. If he gets one over on Dream, even at the very beginning, he figures he can lord it over him forever. If the Kamar van works, right? They get power. They get the discs back. If they get independence, they have their own freaking nation. If they overthrow Schlatt, the citizens won't live in tyranny anymore, right? When looking at the lore of the Dream SMP, every event manages to have consequences that outweigh the one before without getting completely ludicrous. You can suspend disbelief and like buy into this in the real sense of entertainment, meaning like if this were a TV drama with live actors saying and doing these things, it would make sense. You'd be all about it. This is another big point here. This is where the acting in the Dream SMP is huge. There's only so much you can do in the body of a Minecraft avatar, right? Your face doesn't move. Your body's moving like a block. All of the acting has to be done through performing emotions, through the voice acting. And that, especially when you take into account that there are a bunch of teenagers doing this, right? That is impeccable. It does something called reinforcing the conflict. Like the actors, they do such a good job at painting who the good guys are and painting them as the underdogs who even start to fight amongst themselves. There seems to be no way that Wilbur and Tommy can win, but you gotta watch. You gotta hope they will. You gotta watch to see if somehow they can pull things out. Now, that's where you get to the challenge that's asked and answered. If they don't make the fight seem important in the moment and to the Dream SMP as a whole, you're not gonna care, right? It's like a minor thing off to the side, like with Dream marrying Fundy, right? Like it was funny, KSI starting a school, it's funny, but ultimately you're like, okay, that doesn't really mean anything. But do any of these things ring a bell, right? I want to see white flags at dawn. I want to abolish all of it because I'm running against you. Wilbur Soot and TommyInnit, you're banned. I mean, even when Wilbur said, when I said you wouldn't be president, it wasn't a challenge, it was a fact. No, it was obviously a challenge. It was asked and answered by Tommy in that moment. In the writing and acting, they do everything you need to hype a fight on the Dream SMP. But then when it's time for the fight, you gotta have the goods. If the conflicts don't deliver, you're never going to watch it live, right? Because you'll get disappointed once and you'll be done with it forever. Techno doesn't get 850,000 viewers. People just watch the VODs later on. That's where I mentioned earlier, like stipulations that create a question. And in those questions, you have to tune in because you have to get the answer to these questions that millions and millions of live viewers are wondering about. Even down to the initial Declaration of Independence, right? L'Manberg is surrounded and outgunned. How are they going to respond? That's what you got to tune in to see. The election's an easy one because it literally played out live who was going to win the vote and what was going to happen. You had to see how the new president was going to act. What tricks do Pogtopia have up their sleeve, right? Is Technoblade going to be enough to stage the rebellion? Will Techno be able to concoct a plan to take back Manberg? Who is the traitor in the fall of Manberg? All of these questions lead to you feeling like you're living in a scenario that's like combusting in the moment before your eyes. You know, going into the event, the Dream SMP seems to have clearly established heroes and villains, right? If it wasn't for that question hanging in the air that could change everything, that's why you watch live. It's called appointment viewing. Nothing's spoiled ahead of time for you. The only way to get the whole story, the only way to get it in the moment without spoilers is to watch the event itself. Finally, especially on the Dream SMP, the end oftentimes hangs on the beginning. It brings everything full circle, which makes you wanna keep watching because you get those references that reward you for your time. Tommy stepped down as the president over the discs. You know, the whole run of it was meant to be, it wasn't meant to be. The deal where no matter what, Wilbur was gonna hit the button for Dream. You know, Technoblade saying there can be no government. That's pretty much what he said from the start. You stick around because you want to see those things paid off. You don't know if every moment is going to come back to mean something later. Even the conflicts themselves, right? They play themselves out in a cycle that will always keep you coming back for more. Check it out. In every armed struggle on the Dream SMP, the bad guys, they clearly have the upper hand early on. The good guys make their comeback when it seems like all hope is lost in the moment. There's some twists and turns along the way, but ultimately, the question that I talked about earlier, you know, the why you're watching, that gets paid off. But the bad guys end up having an out. It's if they don't win, they get away, right? The bad guys, they have like glimmer of hope, even if they lose. It's that moment where, in a movie, for example, the bad guy's almost dead. The hero walks away. Then you hear the music. The bad guy's hand clenches into a fist, and you realize, like, oh, he's actually still around. I need to watch the sequel to see what happens to this guy. Friends, it's hard to do any one of these things in entertainment these days. Yet the Dream SMP does them all and does them consistently. Like, think about it. When I went over them, you probably came up with more and more recent examples of that still being the case. My friends, that is why you're hooked on the Dream SMP. It's why you'll likely continue to be hooked as long as it sticks around, as long as they keep writing it with that in mind, either consciously or subconsciously. Maybe if you're a content creator, this can help you wrap your brain around how to frame things related to your channel. I know it's stuff that I've tried to use in some of the different videos that I've done in different points. I hope this was, at the very least, an informative watch for you, my friends. I'm YoBGS. Take care. And as always, I will see you for the Salty Runback.